He is assistant professor, North Bengal University, Siliguri, West Bengal. And let me say something about his CV. Dr. Vivasundar is PhD from IIT Kharagpur in 2017. His research area is physiological fluid dynamics. He completed his BSc in mathematics honors from University of Calcutta and MSc from IIT Kharagpur. He has published 11 research articles in peer-reviewed journals and one conference proceedings so far. After his PhD, he had been working as a research associate at IIT Kharagpur for 1 year and then served as an assistant professor in the Department of Mathematics at SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. He qualified GATE in 2011 with a very good rank of 54. He obtained ACRB DST postdoc fellowship and was granted international travel support in 2018. He is also a life member of international conferences such as Indian Society of Theoretical and Applied Sciences and Indian Mathematical Society. Dr. Dey is currently the center head of NBHM 2021 for Masters and Doctoral Scholarship schemes in North Bengal University, Siliguri zone. And today he is going to deliver his talk on endothelial cell glycocalyx as electrokinetic transport regulator. So once again, I welcome you, Dr. Bivas from there, and you can start your talk now.
Thank you, madam, for your nice introduction. So, is it my screen is visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay. So the first slide is visible, right? So I can start.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as you can know here, we are talking about endothelial cell glycocalyx. Okay, what is that? I'll come later on. But before, I must say that we have all uh, come across the word, say that heart attack, cardiac arrest. In daily news, we heard about this word, that somebody had cardiac arrest or somebody have heart attack. Okay, so actually, what is the primary reason behind it? In the light of electrokinetic transport theory, we just discuss the preliminary of this incident. Okay, so this work I have started with Professor G.P. Rajashekhar, Department of Mathematics, IIT Kharagpur, for last 3 years, and recently we got it published in Physics of Fluids, and today I am presenting this work in presence of all of you. So, what is an endothelial cell glycocalyx? It's a carbohydrate-rich layer, so lining the vascular endothelium. That means inside the blood vessels, at the wall there is the cells, like they're called endothelium cells. Okay, so that endothelium cells is just giving a structural support to the blood vessel wall. Okay, but this endothelial cell layer is a soft layer. So any shear stress happened due to a blood flow may damage the endothelium. So that's why God has given some protective layer upon the endothelium cells. Okay, that layer is actually called endothelial cell glycocalyx. Okay, it's mainly composed of proteoglycans and glycoprotein. Just I have a video for you. Just we can see, I have taken from somewhere, the source is also given. See this lining, whatever observe here, the blood cells are moving very fast, and this lining actually the protective lining called endothelial cell glycocalyx layer, and it is some type of transport regulator. As you can see, this is the layer of endothelium cells, and upon which we have this brush-like structure that is the endothelial cell glycocalyx layer. Okay, so really it's a protective, okay, give some protection from which the endothelial cell layers they can secure. Okay, just see here in the healthy condition it looks like something like black brass type of structure, and in long run if we eat so much of junk food, smoking so much, or taking red meat and the cholesterol rich food say, then certainly there will some damage on this glycocalyx layer, and that is creating the atherosclerosis plaque formation. That is the primary cause of the heart attack. Okay, I just come to details of this fact that why certainly this scenario happens. Okay, so actually what is the endothelial glycocalyx and what is its function? Okay, so if you imagine some protective layer is there, something on a cell surface, so what will do that? What will contribute to the cell surface? Then there must be a limiting of access to certain molecules to the cell membrane. Nobody can directly enter to the cell membrane. There are certain molecules who have that access and they can enter into the cell membrane. Okay. So first one is it is some gatekeeping role there. Okay. The second point is a dissipating fluid shear stress at a distance from the membrane. Okay. So this layer just lying upon the endothelial cells and some fluid is moving on that surface. Okay, so if that layer is not there, then directly it can harm the cell membrane. Due to presence of such layer, the shear stress applied on the cell membrane getting dissipated. Directly there is no impact of shear stress on the membrane. Okay, now you can say what are there inside that layer so that it gains a mechanical backbone, okay, to give such a retardation towards the flow. Okay, so the presence of some carbohydrate network called GAGs and which is connected to the cell membrane via a core protein. Okay, so that carbohydrate network is called a GAGs, or in better word, glycoaminoglycans. So glycoaminoglycans is a long polysaccharide chain consists of repeating disaccharide units. Okay, so some disaccharides are there, they're coming periodically on the chain, and whole the system is a polysaccharide unit, and that unit is a highly polar and hydrophilic, that means water loving. Therefore it acts as a lubricant. So any shear stress comes to the contact of this endothelial cell glycocalyx layer, it getting dissipated, means it's a shock absorber. Some force is there, but somehow it is absorbing. Okay, so just a figure is there. Okay, as I said, the glycocalyx is a gatekeeper to good health. Okay, so there is a figure you can see here. The endothelial cells are lying here and some brass-like structure over there, and it is giving some protective things on the endothelial cells. Okay, if it is not there, it might be exposed to the blood flow. What will happen? That is shown here. If that protective layer is not at all here, so this endothelial cells cleft, that means the the portion between two endothelial cells might get exposed. Okay, so from the bloodstream, several fat molecules, then some calciums, extra calciums will be deposited on this surface, and ultimately it can enter inside this cleft. Okay, so in long run, when so much deposition happens inside, so there is a particular type of cell you can know, it's a T lymphocyte or T monocyte. They find that the whatever deposition is happened, that is due to some virus or bacteria or some foreign pathogen, so they immediately reach to that place and try to phagocyte those things. That means that is going on inside this cleft. Okay, so as soon as they enter there and phagocyte all those things, then what will happen? They create a special type of cell called foam cell. Okay, that foam cell is a clumsy fat type of things, and their deposition is making that place a feeling of fat molecules. Okay, some fat layer is there. Okay, so that deposition of fat can build up a lining of the arterial wall, and that form of deposition is called plaque. Okay, just I add another video here. You can see that bloodstream is moving, and certainly due to the deposition, a plaque is developed. You can see here, slowly it will come. Yeah, you can see the plaque is developed here. Slowly the plaque depth will get increased, and ultimately it can block the passage of the blood cells, and as a result of that, the blockage can happen, and that is called atherosclerosis. Okay, so whenever this happened, we go to doctor due to some problem happened with us. Some say we had a chest pain, or we had a maybe some tiredness, excessive tiredness. So whenever it happens to us, we go to doctor, and doctor give some advice for getting a special type of surgery, that is bypass surgery, or sometime I forget the term actually, angioplasty. Okay, so just angioplasty, they suggest some surgery like angioplasty, and they just put some stent here to make that passage more widen. Okay, so in this investigation, what we actually do, we try to model a blood microvessels where EGL present in the inner wall of that microvessels, and that EGL is healthy enough. There is no damage at all. So whenever it's a healthy, it has some role for uptake phenomena of albumin, globulin, plasma protein, LDLs from the bloodstream. Actually, there is a metabolism process going on inside the body, that the body itself can take up those things from the bloodstream and get metabolized. Okay, but if it is comes in the bloodstream with a heavy number, okay, so if more LDLs and plasma proteins etc. depositing, so that will create some problem. Otherwise, the body has its own process to metabolize those things using the endothelial cells. Okay, so next we introduce a pseudo-steady solute transport model, and how this endothelial cell glycocalyx layer take part in the transverse solute permeation flux from the luminal fluid. What is a luminal fluid? It is just a blood plasma, okay, to EGL. So why we call this luminal fluid instead of blood plasma? Because there are so many debates that whether a blood can be regarded as a Newtonian fluid or non-Newtonian fluid. So many debates are there. So just to minimize those debates, people are assuming that in different modeling, we have to take the blood as either Newtonian or non-Newtonian. Okay, it is depend on the model which the mathematical modeling person is doing. Okay, so that's why we refer it as a lumen. So here is a cartoon diagram which shows that presence of endothelial cells, and it holds negative charge. Okay, so that is the primary investigation of our study, that it holds a negative charge, and how such a negatively charged layer can take part in the uptake process of different molecules, as we have mentioned, and also that mass transport process. Okay, so this is we have taken from our paper. So the blood cells are moving, and then this part is actually the endothelial cell glycocalyx. This is the endothelial cells. Okay, and it is negatively charged layer. Similar diagram is also given to let you know about the domain of discussion. So we give the name omega L. It is a layer where we can see the presence of blood cells and blood plasma, and the both side the EGLs are sitting. Okay, it has a depth, say dp, and accordingly we put in the mathematical form. Now I come to the core level of this modeling. This, what is there inside the glycocalyx layer in the form of a, say, it's a mixture of two different components. As we have seen, there are some brass-like components are there, but only that brass is not there. Some interstitial liquid is also there. Moreover, the portion of the liquid is much more as compared to the volume of that brass-like structure. Okay, so it's a biphasic type of layer in which both solid phase is there, also fluid phase is there. Solid phase is that brass-like structures, and the fluid phase is the interstitial fluid. Okay, but it has viscosity that is different from the plasma layer. Okay, so you can imagine that two different viscous layer is sitting one upon other. Okay, so in the case of EGL, we have taken the biphasic mixture theory equation, which is actually derived from the standard Navier-Stokes equation or generalized momentum transport equation in this form, where the first thing is the unsteady deviatoric part, then the contribution of the stress, then interaction between two components, okay, and then the contribution from the external electric field. Okay, so in this way we put this momentum equations. Okay, so there are two phases, so we have two momentum equation over here. Then correspondingly we have a mass transport equation, mass conservation equations. Here is also two phase, so we have two type of mass conservation equations. Okay, so variation of density is there, and then variation of the mass flux. Okay, so next zone is the stroke flow region, that is the lumen region, where we have taken into the consideration that the lumen is a purely Newtonian fluid, and the trace here TL is a Newtonian trace, and this FEL is a it's a electrokinetic body force. Sorry. So as I said, the stress field given in the Newtonian form, so we must have the stress field in this way. If you see the viscosity playing a linear role here, and the hydrodynamic pressure is also there, then we have the solid stress over here. Okay, we have taken that brass-like structure is a typical solid type of continuum. So we have the solid stress equation over here. The Y stand for the Young modulus, and nu P is the Poisson ratio. So they are characterizing the elastic property of that brass-like structure. Okay, so next we can see the stress field in the lumen region. It has same structure as this because luminal fluid is a Newtonian one, as we have assumed. Typically it may be non-Newtonian also, but here we are taking it's a Newtonian due to the simplification of the model. Okay, our friend Dr. Sutradhar used to take it non-Newtonian, and he may argue with me that why it is a Newtonian. But I tell at this point of view that it can be a non-Newtonian also, but you can take it Newtonian for your modeling, if you make your modeling little bit simplified. Okay. So hardly matter, okay, between non-Newtonian and Newtonian hardly matters. Then there is an interaction force between phases. As I have told that in EGL, there are two phases, one interstitial fluid and the brass-like structure. Okay, that brass-like structure is a solid phase and interstitial fluid is a liquid phase. So both are interacting with each other. How? They have a relative motion between each other. So whenever some external force is there, so they try to interact between them. So their interaction is just follows from the Newton third law, and it is given in this form. And this gamma p is some hydraulic conductivity, or it's a frictional coefficient. You can say that they have an interaction, and that interaction is manifested by this term gamma p. And then this term is related to the growth of that phase. So whenever that brass-like structure increasing or decreasing, that means the damage happened in that EGL layer. So the brass-like structure will little bit reduce. Okay, the volume fraction will be reduced. That's why we have some changes over here, and that will directly give some impact on the hydrodynamic pressure. Okay. And the last part is the electrokinetic body force. So whenever we have discussed about that EGL, we have told that it's a negatively charged layer. So negative, where is the negative charge is there? The brass-like structure contains some negative charge, and it is spreaded over the layer. The brass-like structure is giving not only the rigidity of that the endothelial cell glycocalyx, to also giving some electrokinetic impact. And the interstitial fluid is there in the EGL, that is also some electrokinetic impact. That's why we put this term also. Okay, so this term is for the fixed charge that is attached with the glycocalyx layer, that is a brass structure that is attached with the brass structure, and these are from the free ions which are present in that layer, in the liquid layer. Okay, so both are giving some impact. And the next one is the body force due to the electrokinetic charges present in the plasma layer. Okay, so this is the charge density multiplied with the potential gradient, electrostatic potential. That gradient, when it's multiplied with the charge density, it will give that force. Okay, actually this psi and these three psi's, they satisfy, two psi's, they satisfies the Poisson-Boltzmann equation, which is given in this form. Okay, so if we have this equation, Poisson-Boltzmann equation, then if we apply certain algebra on the right hand side part of these equations, we can just here we can get some Poisson equations. Okay, so Poisson equation, the structure will come later on. So Poisson equation, when we solve it, we get the electrostatic potential. So two electrostatic potential we get. First electrostatic potential corresponding to EGL, and the second electrostatic potential corresponds to the lumen, that is the plasma layer, blood plasma. Okay, so once again we get this figure over here to just once again tell about the fact. So this is the EGL, it holds negative charge with the brass-like structure. So this network is a brass-like structure. It holds negative charge, and the liquid layer presents the liquid phase present here. It is holding mobile charges. Okay, that is not visible in this figure, but you assume that it holds negative charge. It holds both negative and positive mobile charges. Okay, and this part, this one is a plasma layer, and it contains both negative and positive charge. But however, due to having the attraction field of attraction, the positive charges get accumulated on the surface of the interface of EGL and plasma. Okay, so at this interface we getting lots of positive charge. They are accumulating, and that layer is actually regarded as a electric double layer. Okay, in that electric double layer we get two types of charges. One is which is fixed, affirmed to the interface due to the high rate of attraction, and another type of charge, they are freely roaming around inside the double layer. Okay, adjacent to the EGL and luminal interface. Whenever we call about lumen, you must assume we are calling at the plasma. Okay. So now we have to put some boundary conditions. Here we are putting the velocity continuity. How this velocity continuity play roles here? As I have said, that two phases are there. For example, one solid phase, another liquid phase, and they have some volume fractions. See, if one is a unit volume, then some part of that volume is occupied by the solid phase, and another part is occupied by the fluid phase. That's why we take this volume fraction phi s and phi f. Essentially, phi s and phi f, their sum is equal to 1. So this part, if we see the phi s into Vs, that is the contribution from the solid phase movement plus contribution from the fluid phase movement, that is equal to the velocity of the lumen. Okay, so this is the interface velocity balance conditions. Next is the interface stress balance conditions. Okay, so two type of stresses are there. Just you can see here, we have two type of stresses at this place. First stresses is due to the solid movement, and the second stresses is due to the fluid movement. So both type of stress are giving some impact on the luminal fluid. Okay, how they are giving impact, that is represented over here. The first stress is equal to the volume fraction of that stress due to the lumen, and this is also the stress due to the solid phase, that is equal to the volume fraction of the solid phase into the stress due to the lumen. Okay, so here we have the structure. We have structured the interface conditions in this way, when we call it as the continuity of the stress condition and continuity of the velocity condition. And if you see at this place, it can be a rigid wall because it's just a wall of the blood vessels. There is nothing. It can be a rigid wall, or in generalized sense, we can say the velocity of the wall. Maybe some velocity there, but we don't know what is that. That's why we put some ambient value. Essentially, it is a 0 for a mathematician. Always we are happy to assume 0 anywhere, so it is 0. And then next one is a regularity condition. That is it's a channel. So first part, what is going on here, the similar thing is going on over here. Okay, just a mirror image to give an impression of that mirror image situation. We use that regularity condition at this place. Okay, so if we solve our mathematical modeling in one part of the channel, then other part we have the similar interpretation. We no need to solve. Okay, now we add some boundary conditions in terms of the electrostatic potential. Okay. So you have seen that there are two electrolytes essentially. So first electrolyte is there, and it has some different charge density, and second electrolyte is there with some different charge density. Both of them have their density difference, means hydrodynamic density is different, as well as electrostatic charge density is also different, but they have some relations. Okay, so at the interface the potentials have a difference that is called the interface zeta potential, that is zeta d, and the both fluxes, that is flux from this side means that lumen to EGL and then EGL to lumen. So the flux of ions, that means if there is an interface, say, and one liquid is there, another liquid is there, both are charged. So there must be some ion exchange process across that interface. So that is governed by this charge density called QC, the interface charge density. Zeta W is a wall zeta potential, or uniform wall zeta potential, that is the potential which is maintained at this place. Okay, at this place. Now we have the similar symmetry conditions or regularity conditions, that is we want to solve only one part of the channel. We let it go the other part of the channel because they are actually symmetrically same. Okay. Now I just tell little bit of solution methodology, but I don't know whether you are all from mathematics background. If somebody else from different background is also there, so you can follow my talk. Just I don't go so many mathematics over here. Just I tell how we can solve this. Any electrostatic problem, we have some particular solution methodology called perturbations methodology. It's a perturbation type of problem. So we have a basic state, or we have an equilibrium state. So whenever that equilibrium state is there, when we apply some external electric field there, so definitely that equilibrium becomes disturbed, and the disturbance comes from the external electric field is manifested by this term. This you can see this, if it is the equilibrium one, and this is the external disturbance. Equilibrium external disturbance, equilibrium external disturbance. Okay, the same thing is happened for every variable sitting over here. At equilibrium, if we say the hydrodynamically the system is at rest, that means no fluid movement is there, no solid deformation is there, everything is at rest, then we can assume it's a static phase. So the equilibrium state, everything is a static phase, so we put 0 here. Then suddenly the electric field is imposed and they are starting moving. Fluid is also moving. The solid structure, that is a brass-like structure, also they are deforming. So that's why we put in this form 0 plus some product quantity. And also the pressure, some undisturbed pressure field there, and due to the disturbance, the pressure is also get disturbed. Okay. So as I have introduced that electrostatic potential before, that same potential we are bringing over here. After some algebra, we don't want to go to details of this because these are little bit technical. So you just try to understand that how we can get the electrostatic potential. We have a certain type of equation that is called Poisson-Boltzmann equation, and that satisfied by this type of equation 24. So if we solve this, we get the the equilibrium electrostatic potential. Okay, this is this one equilibrium electrostatic potential. Equilibrium electrostatic potential for the EGL. This is for the lumen and this is for the EGL. And corresponding part of state potential are this psi L dash, psi P dash. They are satisfied by these equations. Okay. Now their charge density can be expressed in terms of the electrostatic potential in this way, because the charge density is some it's a some variable which is proportional to the potential. It is very much useful to discuss everything in terms of potential. So the charge density term itself creates some problem. That's why we can bring the potential over here. So we just bringing the potential thing into the equations and discuss everything in terms of the potential, because if we know the potential, we directly know about the how much force is there on that electrolyte systems. Okay. Now here, whenever we discuss any electrolyte system, there is a term called a Debye length. Debye length we already introduced once. Just to introduce once more, I just go to the figure here. Okay, you can imagine that the negatively charged layer is there. Okay, why I said it's a negatively charged? Because number of negative ion must be more here, must be adequate in number. Okay, and the mobile negative ions is also there, fixed ion is also there, mobile positive ions is there, but their number is less. But negative charges are more here because some of them are affirmed with the brush-like structure inside the EGL. So due to the presence of all this negative charge, they try to attract the positive charge from the lumen layer, and it holds the positive charge near the interface. And how much positive charge will accumulate, that depends on the strength of the electric field. If you have the highly strained electric field, then it will hold more positive charge. Okay, and they stick near the surface. Okay, but if the electric field become weaker, so they can move along the axial direction, or that is called the mobile ions. Okay, so whenever strength of the ionic strength of the solution is low, then we have higher Debye length, that is higher diffuse layer of charge, where the more mobile charge can be found. But when the ionic strength is high, then we have the less diffuse double layer, and less number of diffuse ions are there. That means less number of mobile ions are there. Okay, mainly contribution comes from the fixed charges, which are already fixed. So we have the two type of Debye lengths. Why? Because we have two type of electric field, two type of electrolytes. One is inside that EGL, another inside the lumen. So both are electrolytes, and both can interact with each other. That's why we have the combined Debye length. Okay, so many mobile ions are there inside the Debye layer. So many fixed ions are there. Okay, it's a just collection of many type of ions, some fixed, some moving. Okay, so actually we have put the Debye length in this form. This is the composite Debye length. Okay, so I fixed and I mobiles are the ionic strength due to the fixed charges and due to the mobile charges. Okay, so just we have given their form mathematically. Now we have solved this system in a unidirectional sense. That means only one direction is there, that is called the axial direction, and using the time dependency we have solved this system. Okay, we can see the potential function, that is the electrostatic potential. They are satisfying this equation, that is called the Helmholtz equations, which are directly coming from the other the step we have followed there. And if we directly solve this equation, we get the electrostatic potential. That is essential for us. Okay, now the other part of the system, we can apply the Fourier series expansion. This is a Fourier series, and omega n is a frequency parameter. As you can know, many of you are familiar with this method. If we substitute there, it will separate the time and space, and ultimately we can get a matrix differential equation corresponding to the momentum equation inside the EGL, and then momentum equation inside the lumen region. Here two phases, that's why we have the Zn equal to Fn and Gn. Fn, you can see, is a steady component of velocity inside EGL, steady component of displacement inside EGL. So two type of continuums are there, that's why this Zn is there. And the H is only one phase there in the lumen region, so we have only one equations. Here two equation, here one equation. The hydrodynamic conditions stated before are helpful here to solve this system. Okay, now there are certain condition that existence conditions under which this system can be solvable. So what is that condition? Here if you can see that some Mn is there, it's a say it's a matrix which is a collection of all type of um, parameter involved in this problem. So if we can directly put in the momentum equation certain this expansion, you can create a matrix of this form. Okay, so that matrix, uh, if it is a diagonalizable matrix, under these conditions, trace of Mn not equal to 4 of date of Mn, then it can be diagonalized to this form Cn Dn Cn Dn inverse. So you know about this method. I'm not going to the details. It's a diagonalizable conditions. So if we apply in this form, we just get the solution of the system. And we have the several non-dimensional parameters sitting inside the system. As we have mentioned there, we have the interface data potential that govern the transport of ions from EGL to plasma, plasma to EGL. And then interface charge density and the dimensionless form. And the next one is the electrical driving force. Okay, so these three electrical parameters are there governing the electrokinetic motion. Okay, and we have another parameter that is called the viscosity ratio and the density ratio, because I have said already that plasma fluid is having the different density and viscosity corresponding to the EGL fluid phase viscosity and density. Okay, so we have these 5 parameters. Just I add some figure over here. Here if you want to solve a typical electrodynamical system, you have 2-3 regimes. First regime where the Debye length is very small, that means the ionic strength is low. In that sense, what we have, the axial velocity is low over here. And if we increase the ionic strength, that is the Debye length increases, then certainly we have the increased axial velocity, okay, in the lumen region. And if we still increase it, that it is KL equal to 10, that is ionic strength is very high, that time we have that scenario. Okay, so this phenomena is what I was showing here. It's called a reversal of flow due to change in the electric field direction variation. Okay, so it is a positive and it is a negative. Due to this variation, the velocity field will change its direction. Okay, now I just tell you what is the impact of this. So whenever it's the axial velocity is low, if you see the magnitude is very less, so what will happen that the blood-borne LDL plasma proteins, they try to deposit on the surface, because if EGL is healthy, then it's okay, it can drive out, but otherwise it can try to sitting on the EGL surface and try to invade the EGL. But whenever that velocity increases, then it cannot stay on the EGL interface. It will try to move along the blood flow, and that it is not possible for any type of deposition whenever this Debye length is very high. Okay, because ionic strength is high and the ions cannot stay over here. It will experience high electrical force and move ahead with the flow. Okay, so this is very interesting diagram over here. We can see here when the depth of the EGL is increasing, we have the interface velocity which is high. If you see the magnitude, it is say 0.15, and here it is say 0.12, something like this. Okay, when it's when the EGL thickness is high, then we have the interface velocity getting lowered. Okay, so what will happen? So whenever EGL is very much healthy, So that time there is no chance of deposition or very less chance of deposition. But whenever EGL becomes damaged, that means its length, its depth is getting lower, then there is a chance of high deposition due to the decreasing in the interface velocity. Okay, interface velocity less means there is a chance of high deposition. Okay, this is also a similar figure where we have noted that application of external electric field, the same impact we can observe here, the interface zeta potential. If interface zeta potential changes, what will happen to the axial velocity can be noted here. Okay, so if axial velocity is, the KL, that means dy length is very less, so we have the impact of high impact of the zeta d, that is the axial velocity is low and high rate of deposition possible, and the rate of deposition will decrease with the increase in KL. And the similar thing we have observed in applied electric field plot also. The similar thing is there. Okay, just it's a repetition. Okay, now we take part in a it's a most interesting, I would say, that here the shear stress impact. Okay, as you know, there is a hydrodynamic field we have obtained a hydrodynamic field, and that hydrodynamic field is useful to calculate the shear stress. Okay, so that shear stress, if we calculate and plot with respect to the KL, that is the dy length, we will get this such a plot. Okay, so that with KL, that is with the dy length, that is ionic strength, that the shear stress is increasing. Why it happens? Because when ionic strength is more, then more positive charge accumulation will be high on the interface, and that the deposition of charges may cause a surface roughness, and that surface roughness is creating more shear stress. Okay, but that is whether it is harmful or good, I will explain. But for the timing, we can say that it's whenever we have the high impact of electric field, then there will be high shear rate to be observed. Okay, the same thing is there with here. We see that zeta d is increasing, then the negative zeta d is increasing and the positive zeta d is increasing. We have the lower rate of skin friction. And in terms of the charge density, we have the different scenario. If the charge density is increases, our skin friction is also increases. Okay, so actually we need the lower charge density, because the high rate of skin friction is not welcome to us. We always try to have the low rate of skin frictions. Why, I will explain after this figure. So here is also another plot where with the frequency parameter, if we plot the shear stress or interfacial skin friction, we can see that ionic strength decreasing means the shear stress is also increasing. Okay, here we can see the applied electric field increasing. That means we have the higher rate of skin friction. So now we just discuss what is the bad or good effect of these skin frictions. See, if the friction is high, then certainly damage of the EGL would be high. If the friction is low, then damage of the EGL will be low. Moreover, there are certain literatures which suggest that the uptake of plasma protein LDLs through the endothelial cell glycocalyx layer is higher in case of the low shear stress range, because when the shear stress is not there so much, so there will be accumulation, and accumulation when there the endothelial cells are ready to metabolize those things, then that environment is very happy for them. Okay, so shear stress is low and they can easily uptake those things from the bloodstream. But whenever the skin friction increases, there will be a delay in the uptake process. Why? Because the deposition will not be there, and those molecules will try to be washed out from the place. Okay, so it has two set of benefit, or you can say two set of um, disturbance. If shear stress is high, we have a chance of damaged region, and if the shear stress is high, we have the less chance of deposition. So uptake process, that is a regular uptake process, will be disturbed. So always low shear stress is welcome. That is, a person with a high blood pressure is not good. Okay, a person with low blood pressure is not also good, but if it is in a say normal range, it is also very good. Okay, so it is very good for we should have maintained uh, uh, normal blood pressure. We should not increase our BP. Okay, so here just we can see that criteria of healthy EGL. We have seen that if the increasing positive QC is lowering that shear stress, and the small zeta d and small epsilons are causes the lower shear stress. So we can identify these three factors for to achieve that low shear stress, and these are the criteria of healthy EGL. And if we can measure these things, we can directly tell that our EGL is healthy or not. Okay. So we have put this sentence, we can identify this factor as a potential diagnosis indicator of a healthy EGL. Okay. So next part, I just tell about the diffusional mass transfer, what is going on from the EGL, from the lumen to EGL. Okay, that is a pure type of diffusional process, and it doesn't depends on any type of shear stress and any type of other uptake process. It just depends on the diffusional mass transfer. Means one molecule have higher diffusivity, it can enter from EGL to it can enter from the plasma layer to EGL. Okay, so we have that typical diffusion convection equation over here, and this one is can be solved from that hydrodynamic part, which is already solved, and this one is this one is already given here. It's a VP, that is a it says uniform flux from the lumen to EGL. Okay, it's a uniform flux. We have to prescribe it from the outside, that how much flux the EGL can experience, that is understood by this VP. And this one, this VLX, it is already solved from the hydrodynamic part. We have HN there, that HN is nothing but the VLX over here. Okay, so this two type of velocities are there. One is a VP, in other words it is called a permeation velocity. That means a uniform permeation flux from blood plasma to EGL, and then the hydrodynamic velocity, axial velocity. So if we plugged it here, and two conditions are two boundary conditions and one initial condition is stated over here. Here actually these are all not initial conditions, the three boundary conditions. So if we state these three conditions, first condition is the entrance region condition. That means we take some entrance region from where we start our observation. Then on that interface we have that total flux equal to 0, that is a diffusional flux. Okay, so if we see the EGL and blood plasma interface, at that interface we have the total flux, that total mass flux equal to 0. And this is y tending to infinity, means the far away from that the wall, far away from the, not wall, that is a far away from the interface, we have the ambient concentration. Okay, so in order to solve this equation we need this type of conditions, and that this is called the hydraulic diameter, that how much surface is exposed for accepting those molecules from the bloodstream. Okay, that is quantified by this hydraulic diameter. Okay, all the surface of that EGL are not hydrophilic. Some part they can accept the molecules, some part may not accept. That is, it's a permeability criteria we can see. So now we can solve this system using similarity transformation technique, and just inside the mass transfer boundary layer, that is the fictitious layer over the interface, inside the mass transfer boundary layer, we can solve the system using the similarity transformation technique. So this equation can be reduced here in this form. So this is the mass transfer equation valid within the mass transfer boundary layer, which is created over the EGL and plasma interface. Okay, it's a fictitious layer, as I said. Okay, so this boundary conditions is also, this boundary conditions is also getting transformed to this type. Okay, now this P is actually the non-dimensional VP, that is called the permeation flux. Okay, now to solve this, we have the mass transfer coefficient definition, and just if we plug the solution over here, we can get that one, and ultimately we can calculate the local scheduled number, that is the different definition is get the rate of mass transport locally, that it depends on the x. Okay, it depends on the distance on the interface, that how much mass can be get transported from the lumen to EGL, that is quantified by this local scheduled number. And if we take the average on a particular length, okay, say 0 to 1, in a unit length, if we average, that will get the length average scheduled number. These are all mass transfer coefficient. Okay, this quantify how much diffusional mass get transferred from lumen to EGL. Okay, now for the obtained expression can be simplified later on, and for a limiting case, and we can get it. This is called the Lebesgue solution, and this Lebesgue solution, equivalent Lebesgue solution, is obtained by different researcher. I have put some of them here, and this limiting case is required for comparison of our study, whether our comparison is just that should be correlate with their correlation they have obtained. So this is our correlation, so we have obtained from our mathematical modeling, and this correlation must satisfy with them, and it is fortunately get satisfied. So we have nicely compared our result. Now I just take some picture on the mass transport. Okay, so first one is a local scheduled number variation. So local scheduled number, if you see that at the interest region, the scheduled number is getting increased, and later on it is decreasing. While at the interest region, the thickness of the mass transfer boundary layer is very less. So mass transfer boundary layer, whatever there it's created, that is giving some resistance to the mass transport. Okay, so whenever the thickness is low, that is the intense region. Okay, so we have that less retardation. Less retardation of the mass transfer, and whenever it increases, then we have the less retardation of mass transfer. Okay, so it is increased with the QC, that is the interface charge density, and decreases with the interface potential, or interface zeta potential, or sometimes we tell it as a Dunan potential. Okay, now that this one is little bit different from the shear stress variation. Here, if we see that diffusional mass transport increased with the interface charge density and interface charge density and applied electric field. If we see that with the increasing EL and that zeta D, it is getting increased. Okay, and after some time that the flatness will be there. That is due to the saturation. Sometime it will have saturated. The low rate of transport may be saturated after a certain time. So it can happen in any type of transport. And the next one is also, you can see here that when charge density increases, we have the higher mass transport rate. Negative charge density has a better impact in comparison to the positive charge density. You can see here negative QC has a better role for the mass transport process through EGL. And here also the ionic strength is having a positive impact. Increasing ionic strength give the higher rate of mass transport. And this result is little bit opposite from the shear stress dependent uptake rate. Okay, this anyway whether EGL is damaged or not, there is no direct impact on it because it's a purely molecular process, so molecular exchange process. So there is no direct impact whether EGL is perfect or EGL is destroyed or damaged. The mass transport process has no serious impact. Now we just put some table to show the increase of mass transfer. Here we have calculated the maximum rate of Sherwood number, and if we just compare with the zeta d, if we see the maximum Sherwood number increases with the zeta d, and this table is demonstrating that one, and it show that how the mass transport becomes higher with the maximum value of uh, zeta d. You can see here increasing zeta d and increasing epsilon L. We have the higher mass transport rate, the maximum possible mass transport rate. Okay, and this figure is also giving an idea the locus of the maximum minimum Sherwood number. Okay, why it is called locus? Because we know that it is depending on the zeta d, epsilon L, QC. That's why how much it is depend we have to understand from this figure. Okay, so it is some type of parabolic nature, and this is corresponding to the how the maximum Sherwood number is creating such a curve, and this is a minimum of that maximum Sherwood number, and this one is the minimum Sherwood number profile, and this is the maximum of all minimum Sherwood number. So maximum and maximin and minimax will be coinciding. Okay, here two cases we have seen this scenario, but in case of this interface charge density, we may not have it here because the charge density is varying, because the transport is not a unidirectional. Sometimes from EGL to blood plasma also happen. The ion exchange from EGL to blood plasma all can happen. So that's why it is not a unidirectional transport. It's a both directional transport, both directional diffusive transport. So if we put the positive QC over in this axis, then we definitely see some interaction. Okay. So this is our publication from this work published in Physics of Fluid this year, and some references for this work. I don't know how much I can make you understand about this process, but I am free to answer any questions. Okay, please ask me any questions from this slide. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Dev, for such a nice talk. Do you have any questions, the audience? Are there any questions? Dr. Dev, I would like to ask one question.
Yes, please.
Are you discussing here about only electrophorese or electrophorese as well as hydrodynamics?
Little bit. It has directly no connection with the electrophoresis process. It is a kind of electrokinetics, and microfluidics are also there. But actually, you know, you are a expert modeler. Then there is a certain things which may arise in case of the microfluidic devices, like the surface tensions and all other issues are there. So we are not directly taking those impact over here. We are just dealing with the non-dimensional system, so that it can apply over the microfluidic system also. but there are certain things which may not be present over here. Okay.
Okay.
Any more questions from anybody? Anybody asked to ask any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, so Dr. Abhijit, let us thank Professor Vivaswan for
Yes.
his nice talk. Nice, and most of the faculties of our department are also working in fluid dynamics. So this would be quite helpful
Yes,
for
yes.
them to pursue their research.
Mhm.
So thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Vivaswan, for your
Thank you so
presentation.
much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let us stop
Uh,
then.
office. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Dr. Abhijit, let us stop.
Yes, sure. Let
Okay.
us stop the recording, and thank you once again for joining us, all of you joining us. Thank you once again.